Taking inputs and printing output becomes a crucial part of a programming language when the user wants to give some values and get the output according to the code. But yes, it is important to understand how we can take input from the user, do some operations with them, and then print the output to the user. So hello everyone, welcome back to the C++ series. In this series we are going to learn about how can we take input of some values from the user, store them somewhere, and then print its value by performing some or the other operations. So before actually starting with input, we need to understand the concept of variables and data type. So what are actually variables? Now you can assume variables to be a container which is useful for storing some values. Now the user during the input will supply some value to our code, but that value is needed to be stored somewhere, right? So this somewhere or this place is actually a variable. So what is a variable? A variable is just a storage location in your memory which is useful for storing some values, right? Now when we call these values can be of different types. The value can be an integer value, for example it can be a number. This value can be a decimal value, a real number value. Also this value can be a character value or a string. Now this depends upon what kind of input we are actually expecting from the user. Now based upon that type of input, we need to define variables of that specific type. This is called the process of defining variables, and that as per the data types, right? So this was the concept of the variables and data type. So what we are doing, we are taking input, we are storing them in the variables of that specific data types, and we are performing operations or doing anything else, right? So let us now go to our compiler. We will see how we can take input from the user and do operations. Now before going to the compiler, we need to understand that there are various types of data type. Now if you see any programming book or book of C++, you will find that majorly there are two types, or they make two different types of data types which is available. One is the primitive data type, one is the user defined data type. The integer, the float, the decimal, the short, the byte, the long int, the long double, all this comes under the primitive data type, which is predefined by the C++ compiler. They have a fixed size and a fixed allocation in the memory, right? And the other thing, which is the class, the string, they are user defined data types. That is, the user needs to specify how much amount of space it is going to take. Well, the concept of class and those space allocation we will see in some other videos, but let us focus our understanding of this video to the primitive data type parts. So I have mentioned that there are various primitive data types, and this primitive data type has various size depending upon the type. Now this size is actually the size of the variable, or the amount of space that variable is going to take in our computer's memory. So this space or this size taken by a particular variable of a particular data type depends on system to system. In today's world we have majorly we have 64-bit current days. Previous days there were also 32 bits which were available, but since the systems have now improved, the word length or the byte length has improved, we now use the 64-bit architecture systems, so for which the integer takes 4 bytes. Remember, the integer takes 4 bytes, character take 1 byte, float take 4 byte, the double data type takes 8 byte, the long int takes 8 byte, and like this we will see, right? So without further delay, let's go to our code. Let us understand the variables and the data types, then we will learn how can we take inputs in C++. So let's go to our code editor. So as you can see, this is the previously the code which we have done. So we will just remove this hello world line and the rest of the things will remain the same, because I have explained that this is just a bare minimum code which is essential for every C++ programs. Okay, now I have mentioned that we have to define variables. Now how can you define variables? We define the variables by assigning a data type to it and a name to the variable. Now this name cannot be just anything. There are some reserved set of keywords which are available in C++, and you cannot use them to define your variables. Now you can go to the internet, right? You can go to the internet. You can go to the internet. You can search for keywords. My bad, in C++. So these are some reserved set of words which have a specific meaning to the C++ compiler, and you cannot use them. So as you can see, so if you can see, you cannot use these keywords in naming your variable. So you need to have a check whether your variable name do not coincide with this keywords, otherwise it will create an issue. So that's all about the keywords. So we can now surely move on defining the variables and take input from them. So back again in our code editor. So let us assume that we want to store a number, say 7, in our variable. So suppose the variable name is var, okay, and we want to store the value 7 in it. So var equal to 7. Okay, now since 7 is an integer type, so we can define int var equal to 7. Now this will signify that var is a variable or a memory location of name var, which storing the value 7, which is of integer data type, right? So if you want to print this value or this 7 on the terminal, we already know we can do cout var. So if you do cout var and you run this code, you will surely get 7 as output. So congratulations again to you if you are able to print 7 on the screen. Now this was not our purpose. So we have defined a variable and we have stored some value in that variable and we have printed the variable. Now it's important to understand how much size does this variable actually take. This variable actually takes 4 bytes because my system is a 64-bit architecture system. So in order to check how much size this variable take, you can simply use the keyword size of, okay, and within the parenthesis you can write the variable name. So this will return the size in bytes of the amount of space taken by the variable var. So see, we are getting the updated output as 4, which signifies that int is taking 4 bytes. Now if I change this int to double, I will see that it takes 8 bytes. So it takes 8 bytes. So int takes 4 bytes, my double takes 8 bytes, and similarly the float, which is a little small precision of decimal values, it will take again 4 bytes. So this way you can do some experiment and you can go on checking the size of various data types which are available in C++. So let's not deviate from the topic. Let's come back to our major objective, and our major objective was to take some value as input from the user and print it on the screen. So let us assume that var is the variable which is storing the value which is taken as an input from the user. Now to take input from the user, we use the keyword in, okay, and this is the extraction operator which is extracting the input value from the screen and it will store somewhere. So we have already mentioned that var is the place where this value will be stored. So we are taking input using this line cin and var, which is storing the value which is given as input. Now we want to print the value which the user is giving as input, so we have to cout var, obviously. So this is done now. So if I run this code, I will see an empty terminal in the beginning because there is no prompt which is asking from the user. So if I enter any random value, say 4, which is I am giving this 4 as a value as input, if I press enter, we can see this cout is working. Now the reason behind that, why you are getting a blank screen, because you have not entered a prompt which will ask the user to enter some value. So to remove this ambiguity, we can use like cout, enter a value. Okay, enter a value, and now this will appear much more interactive and easy to understand. So it is asking us enter a value. Now let us enter a value, say 100. Since when we press enter, we are getting the output as 100. Now if you want to and modify it more and modify the output a bit more, we can simply write in quotes, the value entered by you is this, and you have to add the value also, which is bar. So that's it. So if you run this, we get a much more improvised version. So if I say the value now 90, it will say that the value entered by you is 90. As easy as that. So this way we can take input from the user, store it in some variables, and then we can print it. Now similarly, you can try it out with char, which is useful for taking value of char, means character, as input. You can use double to take real numbers as input or decimal numbers as input, and you can print it. The process is pretty much the same. But in case you are taking input as a string or a word, that is a bit different. We will see it in some other videos where we have to use getLine for taking a sentence as input from the user. So that's it in this video. I will see you in the next video where we can perform various arithmetic operations on the value which we take as input from the user. So that's it. I will see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep watching.